Good morning. Good morning. This is Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of Nonprofit Utopia. I want to say thank you so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Before we get started, if you could take the time and introduce yourself, let us know who you are, where you're from, whether or not you have a social enterprise, and what some of your experiences have been. As you may or may not know, we are focusing in the Nonprofit Utopia community on social enterprise. This is social enterprise month for us, and we are taking you through the process of assessing whether or not this is an option for you, all the way up to the point of showing you how to create one and letting you get a chance to speak with some investors as well as people who have actually been there, done that. All right. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. All right, just one moment, please. I said, I said I'm going to share my screen, and here we go. Right, so I'm going to take you to the beginning. All right, sorry about that. All right, so we're going to talk about how you can develop a business model for your social enterprise. And when we talk about business model, that is not the same as a business plan. The business model is exactly what it says. You are going through a process of brainstorming, trying to figure out how you're going to actually develop your business, right? And it also gives you an opportunity to, tweak and make adjustments as you go. And once you get a sense for, whether or not your model is working, then you can go and approach investors. All right. So today we're going to show you how all of this relates to everything else we've been talking about. So in our first video, we did an assessment. Well, we showed you how to do an assessment as to whether or not social enterprise is for you. And we did this from a perspective of a nonprofit. From time to time, nonprofits try to figure out how they're going to bring in additional income beyond their grants and contracts from government and figure out ways that they can approach the market, as an entrepreneur. So that first video showed you how to assess whether or not this is the right time or even whether or not this is the right option for you given, where you are in your development process. We also showed you how to research your ideas, and then we showed you last week how to develop your value proposition. And basically, a value proposition is looking at ways that you can identify your ideal customer, understand what he or she goes through on a day to day basis, understand what their aspirations are, understand what their problems are, and what they're trying to overcome, and then developing a product that will help them to achieve their goals, help them minimize their pain, and help them go through their day-to-day lives on, you know, in an easier way, for lack of a better way to describe it, make their lives easier. And today we're going to talk about the business plan. The business model. And just know that your value proposition is the center, literally the center of your business model. And you're looking at ways to actually deliver value. So the value proposition looked at what value you were going to provide, and the business model shows you exactly how you're going to deliver that value. We talk about the resources and the people that you'll need and how much it costs and all of that good stuff. But before I get ahead of myself, let me just back up and let you know what we're going to cover today. So we're going to build on the lessons that we have learned from the first videos, right? And then show you how to actually build a business model that you can tweak. Now, if you're a member of the Nonprofit Utopia community, you should have at your fingertips, if you go and do a search in our community, you'll find all kinds of resources that will help you. You'll find a value proposition canvas along with instructions, and you'll also find this business plan canvas where you can actually do this at home. All right. So today we're going to take you through a process of developing that business model that is based on your value proposition and show you how to streamline it. So you're going to get to hear me talk about this stuff for a minute. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions, make comments, share who you are, where you're from, and all of that good stuff. And it would be really, really helpful if you shared some of your own experiences, some of your frustrations, as well as some of your triumphs in developing your own social enterprise. For the people in the Nonprofit Utopia community, we have a copy of a business model canvas, as well as I said before, a copy of the value proposition canvas. And there are a number of resources that you can use and download to help you flesh out your ideas and even test your ideas. All right. But regardless of whether you're a member or not, you will still have access to this recording. And although we're on Facebook and YouTube, we recommend that you go to the YouTube channel to watch it. All right. So before we go any further, I just want to shout out to Alex Osterwalder and Yves Peigneur. They are the founders of Strategizer, and they shared these tips as well as wrote a couple books that have been very helpful in developing this presentation. So for today, our working definition of a unique value proposition is a bundle of products, services, and programs that create value for a customer segment. And remember, it doesn't create value unless people need it and they're willing to pay for it. And your value proposition is really going to take into account your customer profile. And when we talk about your customer profile, this is your ideal customer. You want to be able to know that customer well enough to understand what it is he or she goes through on a day-to-day basis. Depending on the product, this could literally be their job, or if you have a product where it's a consumer product, you want to understand their lifestyle. You want to understand what they aspire to, what their gains are. And you also want to understand what some of their challenges are, some of their pain points. And given who they are, what they go through on a day-to-day basis, what their gains are, and what their pains are, you begin to develop products and services that will help make their lives easier, help them alleviate their pain, help them to actually reach their goals. All right, so in short order, basically a unique value proposition is a way to provide a benefit to your customer. And don't get benefit confused with features. We can have good features all day long, but the features in and of themselves are not enough to make people buy. You have to actually show the value for them. All right. And we also talked about a sample formula that you can just literally fill in the blanks to develop your own value proposition after you go through that process of mapping out the client profile and then, your services. All right. So you can fill in the blanks here. Our products and services help whatever customer service or whatever customer segment, that you are addressing, who want to achieve a certain result, and you're going to tell how you help them achieve the result. And then if you want to, you can actually say something to the effect, unlike a competing value proposition. This could be a competing product, it could be a competing source of income. All right, we also gave you the example of this book, Value Proposition Design, where the people who wrote the book actually went through that same process. They did a value proposition canvas. They understood their customer. They understood what made the customer tick, what it is they aspire to, what their pains were, and then brainstorm a number of ways that can help alleviate the pain, help them reach their goals, and make their lives easier. And one of the ways to do that was to develop this book, Value Proposition Design. And their value proposition was, our book helps business professionals who want to improve or build business by avoiding making stuff nobody wants and creating clear indicators to measure progress. And their target audience is people who are working in, the consultant field, who are actually working to help their clients to achieve better results. All right. So the real value occurs when you really get into your ideal client's psyche, so to speak. You understand what makes them tick. You understand what they go through on a day-to-day basis. You understand what they aspire to. You understand what gives them pain. And then you develop products and services that help them achieve their goals. These are the gain creators. You help them alleviate their pains. And then you develop products and services that will actually do all that for them. So the gain creators would manifest themselves in terms of a feature, the same as the pain relievers. But the products and services are actually what you deliver to your ideal client in order to make his or her life better. All right. So for our purposes today, we're going to talk about a business model as describing the rationale of how you deliver value. Remember, the value proposition is what value you're going to provide. The business plan, I'm sorry, I always say plan. The business model canvas shows you how you're actually going to do that. And typically, the business model has 9 parts, and there are different business model canvases that might have more than 9 parts, might have fewer than 9 parts, depending on, what sector you're working in, what it is you're trying to achieve, and what your particular needs are. But for today's presentation, we're going to talk about the 9 building blocks. The 9 building blocks include your customer segment, the value propositions, the channels, the customer relationships, revenue streams, key resources, key activities, key partnerships, and the cost structure. All right, so if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them and I'll address them after we're done. All right, so building block number 1 is customer segments, and those are the different groups of people that you are trying to serve. It may be the same product, but you might have to communicate to different people who use your same product in a different way. So it's basically just a different way of servicing various targets for that customer. And then you should also know too that your value proposition canvas, you should do one for every product and customer segment that you have. All right. So when we look at how you're going to approach the market, some of the guiding questions could be things like, who are we trying to create value for, and who are our most important customers? Remember, you want to try to get the biggest bang for your buck as you approach the market. And speaking of approaching the market, we have a number of ways that we can approach the market. One way is the mass market approach. And generally speaking, startups do not approach the mass market unless it's a startup that's generated by, a multinational company that's already been there, done that, and they have millions of people that they're serving already. Typically, you are looking at the market itself, not necessarily differentiating customer segments, because most people at a basic level might have the same desires or uses out of this type of product. So this could be used in consumer electronics, right? Then there's another approach where we're looking at the niche market, right? We're looking at a very specialized market. Typically, we are servicing a very limited number of customers, or a type of customer that has very, very specific needs, right? And you might often find these models in supplier-buyer relationships. For example, a car parts manufacturer and a car company, might be similar um, people. Not similar people, but they, those are customers and suppliers. All right, another approach is the segmented approach, right? So you're looking at really having a similar product. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but it's a similar product, has similar uses, right? But you're targeting different segments of the market. And one example could be um, Credit Suisse. For example, they have people who make deposits and they have assets of up to $100,000 under management with Credit Suisse. They also serve high net worth individuals with net worths of $500,000 or more. So in that case, same company, similar product, different segments. Another example is micro precision systems, which makes micro micromechanical products, right? So these are little parts to a watch, little parts to medical supply companies. So they have three major segments. One is the medical industry, the other is the industrial automation segment sector, and then the other one is the watch industry. All right, so they're going to have, again, these are similar products, but they have different value to different customers, different value, different ways that they use these products. So your customer relationships, meaning the way you acquire the customers, the way you service the customer is going to be different based on the value proposition and based on the use of that product. Your distribution channels are going to vary, all of that based on the customer segment and how they're using your product. Another approach to the market, again, this is usually for your larger, more established companies where you're in two totally different industries, totally different businesses altogether, but you might use similar infrastructure within your company. So a good example of this is Amazon. You've got Amazon Web Services, where that's a B2B company that is providing sophisticated web services, managing their platforms and other customer interface, right, online for other companies. And at the same time, they're also running Amazon, the company that most of us are familiar with for purchasing books, buying, consumer goods. These are two separate companies, but they both use the same IT infrastructure. All right. Another approach to the market could be, organizations that have interdependent customer segments. And a good example of this would be a newsletter or a newspaper, where on one end, right, they might be able to give the newsletter away to us, the consumer, for free. But based on the number of consumers they have reading their material, they can then go out to people, to finance the production of the paper by selling ads, right? And the amount they're able to charge is dependent on how many free subscribers they have. And the advertisers use this newsletter or this newspaper to reach a certain demographic that reads this paper, right? Another example would be credit card companies, right? So you need customers who are going to pay for these cards, right? Pay to use the cards, but then you also need, you know, merchants who are going to use the cards too. So they're willing to accept these cards, and in return, they're paying a fee, right? So whatever we pay, they're not getting the full revenue for accepting these cards, right? And yet another example with the banks are the fact that we deposit money into banks, and then the banks go out and lend the money to other businesses or people who want mortgages. So typically, when we look at a social venture, meaning a company that has a social mission, And when we look at the way they start up, they typically are more niche oriented, right? So they're going to operate in a specified niche, or they might be inclined to operate a business model that has two customer segments that are kind of interdependent to make their business work. Again, a good example is a newsletter where you have subscribers on one end and advertisers on the other. The second building block is the value propositions. And as we indicated before, that's basically looking at your customer profile, your ideal customer profile, looking at how people live, how they work, what they want to achieve, what their pain points are, and then delivering a product or service that mitigates their pain and helps them achieve what they'd like to achieve on a day-to-day basis. So the questions you might want to ask are, what value do we deliver to the customer? And again, value is not necessarily useful. Value is a benefit. How are you making their lives easier, and are they willing to pay for it, right? And which one of your customers' problems are you trying to solve? Because customers are very much like we are. We have 50 million problems, right? But we can only be laser focused on a few problems at a time. So your value proposition should be focused on just a few problems at a time. So what customer needs are we satisfying? And what bundles of products and services are we offering each customer? The next building block is the channels. And basically, channels are ways that we're going to reach our customers. How are we going to reach our customers in order to make that sale? How are we going to reach the customers in order to raise awareness and stay top of mind, right? How are we going to reach those customers? Exactly where are we going to be physically when that sale takes place? Will it be online? Will we be at the airport, right? Will we be in the community? So the distribution channels for actually making that sale. So when we look at the way we choose our channels, we have to be mindful of a number of things. The first thing is we want to know where our customers are. So wherever our customers are, we have to find them. We have to go where they are. What newspapers are they reading? What meetings do they go to? So what websites might they look at, right? So you want to be able to get your message in those places. And if there is a physical location, you want to be able to meet them physically so that you can establish a relationship or so that you can make that sale. So how are we reaching them? Are our channels integrated with the rest of our business model? Which channels work best for reaching our customers, right? Which channels don't work so well? And you want to make sure that your channels are matched with the type of customer you have. Your if you're operating in a niche environment, you probably don't want to advertise in the Sun Times where you can reach a mass market, right? That's more appropriate for a mass market. If you have a specific niche in a specific industry, you'll probably do better advertising in trade publications. You want to look at the ones that are most cost efficient, meaning that you're getting greater return for the amount that you're spending. And then you want to look at how you actually integrate those channels with their day-to-day routines. You don't want to reach your customers in channels where they have to kind of go out of their way, right? You want this to be a natural place of meeting. A great example of that is your Facebook ads, your LinkedIn ads. People are already there, right? So you can easily put your message right in front of them without them changing their routine. So when we look at the ways that we choose our channels or what considerations, we want to make sure that we find the right mix of channels, right, to satisfy how customers want to be reached. And then you can also decide whether or not you want to use your own channels, rent other channels, right? Partner with other people to get access, right? And then you want to decide if you use your partner channels or if you again want to spend the time and the resources to actually invest in your own channels. So here is a channel example from Osterwalder and Peter Muir from their book. Um, as you can see, there are different types of channels. You have partner channels and you have your own channels. You also have indirect channels and you have direct channels. So the types of channels you have are your own sales force, your own website where you're making sales. These are the channels that you own. These are direct channels. And then another way that you can reach people are through your own stores. When we look at the partner channels and the indirect channels, would be our partner stores and through wholesalers. So there are 5 basic phases for our channel. The first one is awareness, right? So that's a communications channel. How do we raise awareness about our company's products and services? And then the second phase is evaluation. How do we help customers evaluate our organization's proposition, right? So again, you want to be able to put your product and service in front of people so you can get immediate feedback as to whether or not you're on the right track. And then there's the purchase phase. How do we allow customers to actually purchase specific products and services? And then there's the delivery. How do we deliver a value proposition to our customers? So basically, how do we deliver a product? How do we deliver a service? And when we talk about deliver, how do we um, make them make the purchase decision? And then after they actually buy the product or service, how do we maintain a relationship? How are we going to communicate with them? How are we going to help them deal with problems when, something goes wrong with our product or service? How are we going to provide the support for them? All right, so building block number 4 is customer relationships. How are we going to court our customers first and foremost? So before they even become our customers, how are we going to communicate with them? How are we going to relate to them? Will it be in person? Will it be through social media? Will it be through trade publications? Will it be through mass media? So basically, your customer relationship building block is going to describe the types of relationships that you have with a specific customer segment. All right, so you want to be clear on, what those relationships are going to be like during the acquisition phase, right? Because, you're going to, again, have to court people before they buy. And then you're going to look at how you relate to people once they are your customer. Will it be through an automated system or will it be one-on-one personal service? And then you're going to look at how you're going to relate to people or other businesses when you want to do an upsell. That is, taking them from the basic product that they just purchased to making yet a bigger sale, a larger ticket item. How are you going to do that? All right, so one way is through personal assistance, right? And personal assistance is literally having someone that you can talk to, having that live body that you can relate to, that body that can actually make judgments, right? And is not going through an automated system with pre-prepared answers that just are annoying, right? And then you've got the dedicated personal assistants. And this is usually for your high-end products and services where people are spending more money, people are more affluent, and they expect personal attention promptly. All right. So, for example, it might be an account manager that is selling to other businesses. It might be a banker that's dealing with high net worth customers. And then we are all familiar with Facebook and their self-service. And in this model, basically you are putting all the tools out there and you're leaving your customer to pretty much fend for themselves in solving a problem, right? So they have tons and tons of articles that tell you, what do you do when this happens? How do you use this feature? When is best to use that feature, et cetera, et cetera. The one drawback is you don't have a live body that you can relate to. And it becomes really, really annoying when you're putting something out on Facebook and then they censor you and you don't have a live body that you can talk to. You have to go through their system of forms to fill out. And then you've got the automated services where everything is done through um, automation. It's done by a computer. And this is really a more sophisticated form of customer self-service. And for example, you have a personal online profile that gives customers access to customized services. You've got automated services that can recognize individual customers, how they use the platform, what their characteristics are, so they can have responses that seem more personalized to you. So the best automated services can simulate a personal relationship, for example, offering a book or movie recommendations. Um, so when we look at our customer relationships, that is how we relate to one another, how we communicate to one another. And when I say one another, I'm talking about us communicating with our clients and customers. So we want to establish, what type of relationships do we want to have with each of our customer segments? No, not necessarily with an individual, but various segments. And you might have a different type of relationship with different segments. Again, your high end customers are going to require more hand holding, more interpersonal relationships, whereas if you have a low end product and there's not much specialization or customization, then you will probably be able to rely a little bit more on technology for your customer service. Look at the relationships that you already have, look at how much those relationships cost, how you can cut the cost, and then look at how those relationships are integrated with the rest of your model. And when I say the rest of the model, I'm talking about the other 8 parts of your business model. So building block number 5 are the revenue streams. And revenue streams basically, in a nutshell, tell you where is your money coming from, right? How it comes from different types of sales. Some of these can be, just a one-off transaction. You're buying, people buy stuff from the store, people buy stuff from your website, or it could be a subscription where you're getting, ongoing revenue, or it could be an extended warranty where you're kind of extending that relationship with your customer over time. So you're going to list the various types of ways that your money comes in and get a sense too as to how much money is coming in from those different types of um, revenue streams. Now this slide gives you a little bit more detail. You can get money from the sale of an asset, from usage fees, from subscription fees, from lending, renting or leasing, and from licensing. And basically, when we talk about an asset sale, we're talking about, on the spot, you are buying something and ownership changes hands from you, the business owner, to the person that is buying that product or service. We also have usage fees, and those are based on the number of units, say the number of minutes you have with a cell phone. So the number of units of use of a particular item, right? So that could also include um, days in a hospital, days in a hotel. You have subscription fees, and that is basically a way of selling continuous access to a product or service, right? So you can subscribe to a community, you can subscribe to a magazine, and lending and renting, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? So you're granting temporary access to a product or service, through this fee. And then you pay licensing fees in some instances to give people the right to use some of your intellectual property. So building block number 6, key resources. Now, those of you who have designed programs and have used a program logic model, this key resources will seem familiar to you. It's basically what are the raw materials you're going to use to make this program work. Likewise, when you start a business, you need to look at, what are the things that I need in order to make my business model work. So you're going to need physical resources, and that could include plant, property, and equipment. It could be facilities, buildings, people, right? Intellectual property. It could be your brands, your trademarks, proprietary knowledge. And when we talk about proprietary proprietary knowledge, we're talking about your unique way of doing things. So it could be a process. It could be knowledge of just the way things work in the industry, right? So you might have intellectual capital that will help you to develop your business model. It could be human resources. So these could be employees, contractors, partners, and financial, which is the cash, lines of credits, mortgage, and loans. And when you think about the resources, you're basically going to think about, what resources do we need in order to deliver value to our customers? What resources do we need in order to meet our clients and customers where they are, right? So they can either buy our services or become more aware of our services. What do we need in order to maintain customer relationships? So again, you want to think about the resources that you're going to need in order to court your clients, and then you're going to think about the resources that you're going to need to encourage them to buy, and then you're going to need to think about the resources that you're going to need to maintain a long standing relationship, brand loyalty, if you would. So finally, what resources do you need to make money? Building block number 9, this is the last one. What activities are you going to engage into in order to generate this revenue, right? So, are you in manufacturing? And if so, what are the activities around manufacturing that will help you take your product from raw material to actually a good or service that you can sell, right? Um, Also, when you look at the whole canvas, you're going to look at the activities that you're going to engage in at every point on that canvas in order to bring about value to your customers, right? In order to maintain relationships, in order to make money. And these activities are going to vary based on what your model is. So one example of an activity is production. And again, in manufacturing, this becomes very, very critical, right? So you're going to look at those activities that involve designing a product, right? That involves actually putting the product together, making sure that you can actually provide value. You're creating a product or service that's going to actually provide value to your customer. And if you're in a space where you're actually building something that you want people to buy, it's always good to test it, rather, test the minimum viable product. So you might not want to build the product to completion because, you're taking a huge risk. People may or may not like it. So you want to take a minimum viable product that has the very basic features that will be necessary for people to either complete their objectives, make their lives easier, or avoid some sort of pain. So whatever that minimum viable product is, you want to test that with potential clients and, get a sense for what they like about it, what they don't like about it, and take that information to tweak it. And you want to probably do that, several times over before you actually bring your product to market. All right. Another activity is problem solving, and this is most prevalent in your medical fields, in consulting, and other service industries. And then there's some business models that require building a platform, and all of their business is really transacted right there on that website. So a good example of that is eBay. So your activities are going to center around not only building the website, but maintaining the website, and then also maintaining those sales functions, those customer service functions, all of that through the website. Building block number 8, key partnerships, and I realize I have gone out of order. Your key partnerships are, they can have various levels. They could be informal partnerships, they could be actual partnership agreements, they can be strategic alliances. Um, that again is a contractual agreement. They could be co-opetition, where you're working with people that you normally compete with to actually provide a service or a product. You can create a joint venture, which is a separate entity that might have a governing body that consists of people from your business and people from the other business. And then you can also look at your buyer supplier relationships, where you are working very, very closely if you're a supplier to develop products and services that are closely in alignment with the goods and services and the value that your customer is trying to provide to their customers. So when we look at the questions for identifying key partners, obviously we want to know who are partners. And the first thing you really want to think about is, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? Do I need a partner in order to do this, right? And if so, who can help me do it? So who are our key partners? How can they offer, how can what they do complement what we do? And how do we work without getting in one another's way, without being competitive, without stealing one another's intellectual property and all that good stuff? Who are our key suppliers? Which key resources are we acquiring from our partners? Which key activities do they perform? Which key activities do we perform? And basically, there are 3 motivations for creating partnerships. And one of the most common is you want to provide efficiency and economy of scale. And when we're talking about economy of scale, we're talking about how do we boost our production, right? So that our cost per unit is actually lower. And having economy of scale can actually position your business in such a way that you have created a competitive advantage, because not only are you reaching more people, but you're able to reach more people at a lower cost than people who are coming into the industry. Another reason you might want to partner is to reduce risk. And a good example of this is the Blu-ray technology, which is really kind of the third iteration of a DVD. You have people who have come together, and when I say people, really corporations who have come together. They're natural competitors, but they came together to develop the Blu-ray technology. It benefits all of them. It also spreads the market risk, the financial risk amongst the people. And some of the investors for this technology include Panasonic, Pioneer, Philips, Thomson, LG Electronics, Hitachi, Sharp, Samsung Electronics, and Sony. All right. And then another reason why you might want to partner, and this is really one of the most common reasons, people want to partner, and that is to get access to skills that they may not have. And it also is to get access to another segment of the market that they may not have. So it's a quick way to expand your reach, increase your skill without having to invest a whole heck of a lot of money. So the first example of this is a mobile phone manufacturer that is licensing their operating system to go in their phone, rather than spend money, time, and dollars doing the research and development on their own to put this in their phones. Another example is an insurance company. Rather than having their own sales force, they go and hire agents and brokers to to actually do their selling. Building block 9 is the cost structure. And basically, the cost structure is, looking at how much every segment on your business plan canvas, your business model canvas costs. So looking at, how much is it going to cost for you to acquire partners, looking at how much it's going to cost in order for you to acquire customers, looking at how much it's going to cost for you to reach those customers, et cetera, et cetera. And when you look at the guiding questions for determining your cost structure, you're going to first look at those things that obviously cost the most and they're the most important in your ability to actually deliver goods and services that your clients will actually value. Which resources are most expensive, and which ones are actually going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. And then not only for the resources, you ask the same thing for the activities. So you really want to engage in those activities and spend the most of your purchasing power on those resources and activities that are going to give you the biggest bang for the buck. All right, so when we look at the various models, we have some models that are cost driven. And a good example of this is Southwest Airlines. They do a lot of outsourcing. They are very cost conscious, no frills, and they're creating value at the lowest possible cost, at the least amount of risk to themselves. And then you have the value driven models. And these are business models where you can actually charge a premium price, right? And you're usually going to address a certain segment of the market. It's clearly not a mass market, right? So you've got the pricing based on, on luxury and premium. And you can do that because of your reputation, because of your relationships, supply and demand, and all of that good stuff. And when you sell a premium product, you're definitely going to have to differentiate it in terms of quality and service. When we look at the types of costs, we've got the fixed costs and we've got the variable costs. Your fixed costs are going to remain the same regardless of how many people you're serving. That is, unless you grow out of your building, you're bursting at the seams. That's one example where a fixed cost can vary. But generally speaking, your fixed costs are going to be things like rent and utilities, property taxes. Your variable costs are going to be those things, those costs that vary based on, the sales that you have. So for example, if you have a medical office, right, and you're starting to get more clients into your medical office, you're obviously going to have to hire more doctors and nurses and support personnel in order to manage this extended, this expanded customer base that you have. So in those cases, those costs are going to vary. All right, so we got two types of economies, right? We've got the economies of scale and we've got economies of scope, right? So you've got economies of scale that occurs when you are mass producing things and you can produce at such high quantities that the cost per unit is actually lower for you, right? And that can also create a competitive advantage for people who are in the industry long term, and it creates a barrier for people who are just coming into the industry and they haven't gotten to the point where they have achieved scale, right? So when we look at economy of scale, that is looking at increasing the number of units produced. When we look at the economies of scope, we're looking at ways that you can use the same raw materials in different ways, so you're getting the most out of those same raw materials. So for example, if you are, I guess, a cattle rancher, for lack of a better term, you raise cattle. Those cattle can be used to produce milk for dairy products. Those cattle can be used to produce meat. Those cattle can be used to produce leather. Those cattle can be used to produce gelatin. So you have the same raw um, ah, raw material, but it's used in different ways to serve different markets, different customers, and that way you're maximizing your raw materials rather than just focusing on one line of business. All right, so we're going to show you how to develop your business model canvas with those 9 blocks. So we already talked about the 9 blocks, and this is the way it looks. This is what a blank canvas looks like. And again, if you are a member of the Nonprofit Utopia community, you can get this blank canvas in our online community. So the typical business model canvas, you have a spot for your key partners. You list those partners who are critical in helping you develop a product or service. And the most important thing, not just to deliver a product or service, but to deliver value, a product or service that is going to be valuable, that people are going to pay for, people get a benefit from. Then you're going to look at your key activities. Are your activities uh, manufacturing and assembly, marketing, and all of that good stuff. So those, and really for the most part, it's those operational activities. You look at your key resources. What raw materials do you need? And again, those resources can be physical resources. They can be human resources. They could be financial resources. They could be intellectual resources. And notice here in the middle, you have your value propositions. So you can have more than one value proposition, because remember, for every customer segment, you're going to have a different value proposition, right? So you have to go through that whole process of developing a value proposition canvas, fleshing those out, and figure out what your various value propositions are. And again, notice it's all in the middle to symbolize the fact that your business model should have as a central focus the value that you're delivering to your client. You've got customer relationships, you've got channels, you've got customer segments. And then when we look at the cost structure, you're going to look at, how much is it going to cost to establish relationships with your key partners, to even, acquire those relationships and to maintain those relationships. How much is it going to cost to engage in those key activities on a day-to-day basis? How much is it going to cost to finance those key resources, those financial resources, those human resources, those intellectual resources, those physical resources? How much is it going to cost to deliver value to your client? Again, you're looking at those uh, features, the gains that you're going to provide. You're going to look at ways that you can mitigate pain. You're going to also look at ways that you can help people to move throughout their day. How much is it going to cost you to actually deliver that value proposition to your customer? How much is it going to cost for you to acquire relationships, to access channels where you can communicate, where you can make sales, where you can maintain ongoing relationships, after the sale is made? How much is it going to cost you to actually continue to service those particular customer segments? And then you're going to do the same thing with revenue streams. Where is your money going to come from after you put all of this together? What money can you generate? How much money? And where might it come from? All right, so I'm going to share with you 3 examples of a business model canvas. The first one is Walkbug, right? And notice you can use this and come up with different versions. This is a brainstorming canvas. One way to use this is to actually take this blank canvas and blow it up to poster size, and then do your brainstorming. So in this instance, local businesses and tour operators were their key partners. Their key activities were creating relationships with tour operators and institutions and creating tour communities. The key resources were their tour app, which was on the web as well as mobile, and then their community assets, their social pages. All right, the value propositions. Notice they looked at their value propositions. They have more than one value proposition. And again, this is based on the various customers that they have. The first one is Walkbug helps tourists new to the city and locals get to know the city they're in. Walkbug helps hobbyists find great and hidden places to practice their hobby. And Walkbug actually helps institutions show people around their campus cheaply and efficiently. The way they were going to relate to their customers or establish their relationships, they were going to provide a research tool for tourists who were new to the city, as well as people who were locals and they just wanted to really get to know their city better. They were going to also establish one-on-one partnerships with local institutions. The channels they were going to deal with. So they were going to reach their customers or interface with their customers through their website, through their mobile app, through personal sales calls, and through social. So notice some of those channels are communication. Some were used to acquire customers, and some were used and acquire relationships, and some were actually used to actually make the sale. So their customers segments were tourists, hobbyists, people new to the city, locals, and institutions. And then they looked at the cost structure in order to effectively deliver value. And they had to pay for the cost of sales to outreach to tour operators and institutions. When it looked at cost of production, they looked at the cost of producing the website as well as the app, as well as supporting their online community. When they looked at marketing costs, they looked at how much it was going to cost to build their online community. All right. And then under revenue streams, they will get their money from white label subscriptions, meaning that they will actually develop the same product and let some other, they will sell it to another company who can use their own name. And then they were also going to get money from local business advertising. The next example is Flickr and their photo sharing. Their key partners are Yahoo, which I believe is their owner. The key activities are platform management, so that big old website that they have to store pictures. So developing and managing that platform and actually selling. The key resources are the Flickr platform brand, and the value proposition is they have free basic photo sharing, and then they have premium photo sharing. And the relationships, they're mass relationships, meaning, and they're customized. So they can reach numbers of people, and then based on the level of service they provide, they can customize their experience. And then they've got Flickr and Yahoo as the channels. So channels for distribution, which is where they're going to meet their customers, channels for communication, channels for sales. The customer segments are the casual users and the high volume users. So the high volume users are going to be those people who actually pay for the premium service. The cost structure is for developing the platform, maintaining the platform, and storing all of those pictures. And then the revenue streams are going to come from a free limited base, basic account, so there's no revenue to speak of, at least not direct revenue. But you get indirect revenue because as you use these basic accounts and you find that they are limited, then you upsell to the people who already have your account. And then you have the annual subscription for the pro account. And then finally, we've got the Amazon business model canvas. Now, this is just for their retail operation. This is not for their B2B service where they're providing IT. So their key partners are their logistics partner, their affiliates, authors and publishers, and then their network of people who sell products. And then their key activities are merchandising, production, and design. Their key resources are physical warehouses, and the human resources include people who develop the web application, and they also develop these applications. So their key value propositions are convenience, price, instant fulfillment with e-reader, and then vast selection. The customer relationships, they have self-service as well as automated service. And then you've got the distribution channels. They have affiliates. They sell through affiliates. They also have application interfaces. And then they also have Amazon.com. Their individual custom, their customer segments are individuals, groups, and then they have a global consumer market. The cost structure, they have a very low cost structure because they have achieved scale and they have pretty much gotten to a point where they're dominating the retail market. They also have low costs because of their IT and fulfillment infrastructure. They're buying their IT from themselves, right? And then they've reached economy of scale because they have been able um, to reach so many people that not necessarily producing all of the products they sell, but they have gotten to the point where they can buy in bulk and they can sell at lower prices and reach many, many more people around the world. And then the revenue streams comes from sale of assets, so that's products and services, through ebooks and the content, acquisitions and investments of other companies, commission on reseller sales, and then prime monthly subscription fees. All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post. I will answer those questions. If you are a member of the Nonprofit Utopia community, remember you can continue this conversation online in the community, and I'll be available to answer your questions, and you can even set up office hours. All right. And don't forget, you can always join Nonprofit Utopia at nonprofitutopia.mn.co and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Alrighty, so now I'm going to look at the comments and questions. And this is from my friend and colleague, Jim. We definitely need to work together. All right, Jim, I think you know where you can reach me. Let's talk, all right? And this is from Claudette. Excellent delivery as always, Valerie. Thanks for providing direction to my social enterprise. Peace. All righty, Claudette. Thank you. You just made my day. Let me know if you have any questions or other comments. And remember, for you as well as for anybody else, these videos are found on our YouTube page. So if you've missed any of our videos before, feel free to go to our page. Jim, amazing advice. Thank you, Jim. And yes, yes. Yahida, they are available on the site. So feel free to go to non. And just so people know, Yahida is one of our members. She's a new member, and she wants to know whether or not these videos are available on the site. Yes. So if you're a member of Nonprofit Utopia, you don't have to go to YouTube in order to get these videos. You can get the videos right there on the site. Go into the events tab. So you'll be looking at the past events and you'll be able to see all of our videos. All right. So are there any more questions? Any more comments? Um, if there are no questions, if there are no comments, I just want to say thank you. I really enjoyed being with you guys today. Make sure that you can join us tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how you can test your model. So remember, there's an art as well as a science to developing your business. We talked about the art so far. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about the science. We're going to look at ways that you can actually test your model. So with that being said, I am going to say goodbye. And again, thank you so much for joining us. Take care.